Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the latest issue ones that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content and you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, you came to the right place. So we got quite a few books to talk about today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get started with this week's episode. Our first book that we are talking about today is Star Wars Ewoks issue 1. This book is 28 pages for the price of $4. I just wanted to see what this book had to offer. Honestly, I'm not an Ewoks guy. I'm more of a villains guy. I feel like I like villains better than the heroes because when I was a kid, Star Wars was like one of those first major movies that I saw that had pretty cool villains, and I love Darth Vader, and I love the Stormtroopers. Like, how can you not like that, right? And so whenever I saw Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, I was like, ah, man, really? But I do want to see, how this all tied into Star Wars and right after the Battle of Endor and all those different kinds of things. The artwork is okay in this book, right? You get to see Wicked, you get to see Leia. She obviously has to leave. And then everything takes place around the whole new head guy that's in charge of the Imperials. And his name is Urbik Adelhard, something like that, right? And you got to see him in the first issue of the Battle of Jakku, that 12-part series. So this does surround all that. It does tie into it, which is actually kind of cool. And just seeing the Ewoks, if you're a fan of them, I think you're going to like them. Personally, me, I was like, there's nothing really here. I think Steve Orlando, again, did an okay job. I thought, Laura Braga did an okay job with the artwork too. I don't think it, was mind-blowing in any stretch of the imagination, but it was an okay book to read. You just wound up getting to see Imperial-led bounty hunters go back to Endor. They have to try to find weapons to bring back to the Imperials, and if they don't, then bad things happen. Bad things are going to happen to these guys. Again, you just get to see some cool little things. Again, was this a horrible book? Absolutely not. Do I think it might be worthy for Star Wars fans? Yes, I think it might be worthy for Star Wars fans. However, for me, I'm not going to continue to pick this up. I just have way too many books. I'm not a huge Ewoks guy. And even though the story wasn't half bad and it does tie into the Battle of Jakku, how it surrounds it's not bad, but it's not great either, right? So I think I'm going to give this a middle-of-the-road type of grade, a very average C. And again, I think if you're the hardcore Star Wars fan, you might like this a little bit more. Green Lantern Civil Core Special Issue 1. It's a 48-page comic book for the price of $6, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, Jeremy Adams, and Salvador LaRocca does the artwork in this comic book. Looks pretty cool as you get to see, your different lanterns in this comic. So you wind up getting to see John Stewart, Alan Scott. You get to see Kilowog in here as a yellow lantern, which I thought it was really cool. There's a surprising ending to this book, which I didn't see coming, and I'll leave that, spoiler free, of course. And you do get to see the Amazo robot, Jaden Stone, in this one as well, or Jade Stone, I should say. So the artwork looked cool. It was cool to see the different cast of characters. They say the phrase. Awesome stuff. Now, this book does a pretty good job at tying in the other two series, right? You got Alan Scott, I think, who did his Green Lantern series briefly. It was a mini-series. Then you got John Stewart, who just finished that storyline as well and actually has the Dark Star ring, and then obviously you got Green Lantern storyline going on from Jeremy Adams. So it kind of ties all that stuff in together with like all the other lanterns, and they're trying to stop the Theros guy, right, who's been posing as like the leader of the United Planets and trying to take over everything, right? And you get to see this huge battle happen in this comic book, and it looks like our heroes wind up winning at the end of the day. They defeat the bad guy, and then something very bad happens at the end, and you're just like, oh crap, like really? Like how are they going to handle that? But this was a pretty cool page right here. And then it just leaves you with this cliffhanger of, oh my gosh, like now it's continued in the Green Lantern series. So what this book does is, yes, it has the all-in it. So what it's doing is it's kind of getting readers caught up, and this would be a perfect book to jump on so you can continue to read Green Lantern. So with that, I'm going to say this book is worthy. I do feel like it's a little bit pricey for what it is. It's a little bit wordy. There's not as much action as I would like in this comic, as there is a lot of standing around discussing things, but what action does happen in this comic is pretty cool. And again, it's a good jumping on point for a lot of readers, and if you want to continue to read Green Lantern, you just got to read the next issue. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a B-. Solid read. Could be a little bit more. All I need is just Jeremy Adams on the book, nobody else. Because I think he writes a pretty good Green Lantern. Blade, Red Band issue 1. Yes, guys, we have another Red Band comic book. And at this point, we should all know that these books are really not that bloody, not that gory. I can read a normal issue of Wolverine, and it's going to be more bloodier than what this comic book has to offer, or maybe any Image comic that's on the stands. It's 32 pages. It's polybagged. It's $5. This one's written by Brian Hill, and the art is done by Carlos Fabian Avila. Brian Hill wrote the previous series of Blade, and I enjoyed it. Here is the artwork in this comic book. It's really dark, heavy on the inks, I felt. Interesting facial expressions here by Blade. I thought I've seen better artwork when it comes to maybe a comic, but as you get to see here, there's not a ton going on in this book. And there's nothing here that makes it go over the top and say, oh my gosh, hey guys, this is one of the bloodiest comic books I've ever read. Or are there any curse words in this comic book? Not that I saw, but so far, do you see anything really bloody or gory? No. So that's why when they sit there and they say, this is a Red Band, it's going to be bloody, this is about what you're going to get right here, right? And that's probably really about it. I mean, that's it. Now, this looks cool, right? But nothing here that's going to sit there and say, oh my gosh, it's so bloody. Oh yeah, you get him. Look, yeah, so there's that. Okay, so let's talk about the story. So we wind up getting to see Blade, like right after Blood Hunt, what he's been doing, how he's been surviving, and kind of reflecting upon himself. And then he winds up trying to get recruited by this guy here to join the group called Spellguard. Blade goes with him, and then at the end of the day, he's just like, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to join you guys. And so, since he doesn't join them, well, what happens? They become an enemy. And then you wind up seeing Blade do Blade-like things and just slice and dice and destroy everything. And now he's going to investigate further on who these actual people are. And then you wind up seeing the bad guy in the shadows at the end. Kind of a point A to point B comic book. Did I think this book was worthy? No, not worthy for me. I liked Blade before Blood Hunt. I thought the Blood Hunt storyline was okay, right? It did accomplish a couple of things, but not a lot. But I'm good. I don't need any more Blade, and I don't think this is a series that I'm going to find myself really interested in. It doesn't take me to the next level. It doesn't really intrigue me. It's definitely a forgettable very first issue, especially if you read a lot of comic books. And yeah, I'm just going to pass on this one, but I am curious to hear what you guys think. I think this book was okay, though. It wasn't the worst thing I have ever read, but it was just very average. So I'm going to give this one a C-. Do you agree or disagree? Sentinels, issue 1, 40-page comic for the price of $5. This one's written by Alex Packnell, and the art is done by Justin Manson. or Mason, excuse me. When it came to this book, I always was intrigued by the Sentinel program. I loved how they were big, overwhelming robots. Always been a fan of robots, right? Since Transformers, Voltron. So that's why I was always attached to the Sentinels. And it kind of intrigued me to see, okay, now we're taking the Sentinel program, making them into humans with nanotechnology. And here's the interior artwork. And what this book does kind of offer to readers is seeing what these soldiers go through being part of this Sentinel program, right? They gotta go into battle. They obviously have to follow orders. They go through these modifications, mood implants, and just things aren't hunky-dory for these guys, right? And they have to sometimes do the tough deed. And it was a very interesting and an emotional story. And you did not really see a single mutant in this entire comic book. Now, this Sentinel program is actually led by Lawrence Trask, and the name of these Sentinel players here, or soldiers, are Lockstep, Sawtooth, Shellback, Void, and you can't really seem like you can get attached to these characters in this comic book. It's more like, again, just getting used to what this program is and what their MO is, and kind of like why it exists and how it ties into Cornea Ellis, right? So you get to learn all those different things. But it was cool seeing these guys interact with each other, and it was a fun comic book. Now, this book definitely has a lot of information in it, so I would suggest going back and rereading it twice. And the ending kind of has your head scratching. I'm like, wait a second, why are we seeing this character? So with all those things, I would say that this book is worthy. I think this is a mini series, so it's definitely worth sticking around for, to seeing how this maybe program evolves. Does it evolve? Do they go back to the robots? I'm not sure. It's an old technology, and they kind of want to stay this way. So at the end of the day, I'm going to grade this book a solid B. This one definitely surprised me, where I was very much on the fence going, man, is this going to be a cheesy 90s comic? And it wasn't. It was a pretty well thought of story. Conquest 2099. This is issue 1, 40 pages, $5. Written by Steve Orlando. The art is done by Abraham Robertson. The artwork is actually pretty cool in this comic. You do get introduced to, or reintroduced to, this world and the villains that it has to offer in this comic book, right? Here we get to see Dracula here, and then we wind up getting to see all of the other characters as well. You get to see Cyclops in this comic book. You wind up getting to see, like, Nova once again. You get to see Yelena, or Yolana, who is actually the Watcher in this world. And so there's definitely been a bunch of, like, one-shots and stories that all have led up to this Conquest 2099 storyline. And I've never been a huge fan of all the 2099 books that have been recently coming out from Steve Orlando. But again, I still wanted to see what a overall story would have with all these characters, right? And in the beginning, you get introduced, like I said, to Cyclops and Phoenix in this world, and they're doing this common battle against this guy called Junk Pile. And in the meantime, you wind up seeing Dracula try to go back to his home world, so maybe he can bring all his people back there. And he comes back to a very destructive world. And we wind up getting to see a race destroy his world, because his daughter comes to him saying, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and this and that, and this and that. And obviously Dracula is like super pissed off on what happened to his daughter, and now he's going to want to take revenge and go from there, right? So this book was worthy. Was it a perfect book? No. I feel like there was just a lot of setup in this comic book so it can get going in the next issue. And if you can deal with that setup, you might want to continue this. And I felt like they sprinkled in the action on the Spider-Man 2099 side of things just to try to balance it out, but I don't think it always worked. But I did find myself intrigued with the Dracula character and his MO going forward, and also who took on the planet, excuse me, was very interesting too. And I don't want to spoil that. I want you to read that to find out who that was. So overall, wasn't perfect, but I did like it enough to continue with issue 2. We'll see how it continues from there. And at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a C+. So guys, let me know in the comments below whether you like Conquest 2099 issue 1 or not. The Terminator issue 1. 32 pages for the price of $5. This one's written by Declan Shavely, and the artist is done by Luke Sparrow. I thought the artwork was pretty good in this comic. However, like, when it comes to a Terminator comic book, I have really high expectations. So not that this artwork was bad in any stretch of the imagination, but I really want to see that Terminator like really glisten, and I want to see all those real robotic like parts, like feel like I'm almost like in the movie. So that's what I'm expecting when when I'm reading a Terminator comic. However, it definitely does the job. You can feel that Terminator in that pursuit after these people, and it does create a lot of tense action in this comic. So what is this story about? Is it really connected to Sarah Connor and everybody else? Not really. All that stuff is kind of done. What's going on in this series, which I think it might be a bunch of one-shots, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like what's going to go on is that there are Terminators being released all over the world, and they're going after the Resistance fighters. So whether these people are in the future or their ancestors or whatever they are, it's these Terminators are released and they're going to take on these people. So in this issue, you wind up getting to see this couple escape a Terminator when they were really young, and years have gone by as they've gotten older, and the Terminator has finally found them, and it's in pursuit of them, and we wind up getting to see the husband and wife being in pursuit here, and whether the Terminator accomplishes its mission or not, you'll have to read for yourself. But this comic is definitely worthy. A very interesting way of doing a series with Terminator. It's like connected to everything, but it's not, right? It's like it's very one-shot style of comic book storytelling, where it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of Resistance fighters, but we're going to send out Terminators all over the place, and you're going to see how this Terminator deals with a couple, and this Terminator deals with a guy, and that person does with it. And does it eventually become like a whole story in the future? Who knows? But nevertheless, it's a very interesting read, and I'll take it like this. This is fine. I'm happy to have a Terminator comic back again. So I really enjoyed this one. I'm going to give this one a B+. Let me know if you read this one, if you were on the fence or not. All right, here we go. The book that you guys are ready to talk about is Absolute Batman. This is issue 1. We've been waiting for this for a long time. 44 pages, $5, written by Scott Snyder. The art is done by Nick Dragotta. The first Batman series that I read that was ongoing, believe it or not, was from Scott Snyder back in the New 52 run, which was actually really good. I mean, his Court of Owls storyline that kicked everything off was spectacular. However, the run wasn't all perfect all of the time. Sometimes it got a little stale, got a little dense. Maybe some of the storyline wasn't that great. Bunny Robo Batman, if you guys remember that. So I wanted to see what this world had to offer for Batman, right? So here we go. Let's talk about Nick Dragotta's artwork here. Looks pretty good, right? Alfred looks pretty badass. He works for this government agency. He's sent to Gotham to try to investigate this group by the name of Party Animals, which reminds me of like Black Mask. Are they this world's Black Mask characters? I'm not 100% sure, but that's what they reminded me of. And they're a bunch of like villains that like have no mercy for anybody. Like they'll kill kids, they'll kill teachers, they'll kill human beings for no reason. They keep their freaking their skin as masks. It's like a collection for them here. Very interesting. There's a lot of like concerned people about this party animal group that they're causing all this mayhem, and how is the police going to handle it. And so yeah, there's just a lot of mayhems on the street. And then obviously you get Absolute Batman in the comic, where in the book he actually looks really cool. You want to see what he can and can't do in the comic, and it did take a little while to get there. So that's what I mean about Scott Snyder's like, you know, writing. Sometimes it's just like, we got to get this and this and this and this and this, and it takes forever to get to the explosive part, and you just want to see that Batman, right? And then finally it gets to it, and when it finally does, it definitely delivers, because you definitely see like how brutal he actually is, right? Like what he can and can't do, and on his mask, on his cowl or whatever, on his ears, he literally takes them off and he uses them as throwing knives, and then he puts them back on. Obviously, we all knew about the cape, how it's bulletproof, but he can use it to whip people across. And then he's got that stupid emblem on his chest, but it's actually a battle axe that he uses. So you do get to see like how strong, what he can and can't do, which I can appreciate. The cool thing about this comic, though, is you do get to learn the origin story of his parents, right? It's not the same old origin story that we've known for years and years. It's different in this world. Who lives, who dies, right? And obviously the relationship between Alfred and Batman here, I think, is just beginning. And eventually I would think that these two are going to work together as like, you know, as like peers, not as Alfred being the servant. I could be wrong, you know, but overall, this book was definitely worth it. It was fun to read. It was nice to see this different universe. I like how we can do different things in this universe. We're not so tied to like editorial and things like that. Is this different to the original Batman? I would say in many cases, yeah, and maybe in other cases, no. Maybe we've seen versions or things like this of Batman in the past, but I wouldn't compare this to your normal everyday Batman. I don't think you're supposed to. That's why it's a different universe. So if you're trying to do that, that's where you're going to drive yourself crazy, right? But just take it for what this universe is about, right? So at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a solid A. I really enjoyed it. It did take a lot to get to where it needed to go to be like, oh, this Batman is pretty cool, right? And that's why I couldn't give it a perfect grade, but nevertheless, it was a fun read, and the ending definitely got me intrigued to see where we're going to go from here. So there you have it, webheads. There are my thoughts on this week's new issue ones. Did you enjoy? Did you not enjoy? Are you a fan of Absolute Batman? Let me know all those thoughts in the comments below. As always, I got that new content for you to check out. And as always, guys, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting. But always remember, read your comics so we can have great comic conversation. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you on the next one.